Hi, and welcome to The Miracle Moment. My name is JJ. I'm your host, and we are with Kenneth Orbeck, DO. Welcome, Dr. Orbeck. Are you so excited?
Thank you, JJ. It's great to be here with you. This is going to be a good time. We're just going to have a lot of fun this morning and just talk about what we do and how we help people.
Yeah, well, we are excited to have you. The first of many, I'm sure, amazing podcasts.
I hope so.
I know so. I absolutely know so. I think it's important, really, for us to start at the beginning. What do you think?
Yeah, the beginning is a ways back, but we should probably go back there.
Okay, I love it. So why don't you tell your guests a little bit about yourself?
Well, it's kind of interesting, and my career is colorful because, when I was, I started out building houses. Like when I was in high school, my dad was a builder. And I'm all about creation and design. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I do. I just love that. And so, I started building houses when I was like 16. And I did it for 5 years. I loved it. And, it was an interesting time in Michigan because it was a snowy, cold day and I was on a roof and I slipped and I fell off the roof. And I'm like, I'm not so sure I want to continue my career like this. I should probably use my brain a little bit more. So I actually enrolled in school to be an engineer. It's interesting. I enrolled to be a mechanical engineer. And I did 2 years of engineering, and then I went and did a course. I did a biology course, and I'm like, whoa, that's cool stuff. So I followed biology with physiology. I'm like, I got to do this. Like, this opened up my eyes. Like, to look inside a body and to see how this stuff worked was like crazy. So I went to a counselor. I go, I want to switch to pre-med. He goes, what? There's no way. It's too late. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm not asking. I'm going to do it. Whether I'll just take the courses, whatever. And so I actually went to summer school all the way through my third and fourth year. I went straight through, and I did my curriculum. I had most of my core basics done, so I finished out pre-med. And I went to a fine arts college, which I love, so I got to be involved in music and art and literature. It was a lot of fun. And then it came down to the grueling moment, med school. Eye-opener. I applied to several schools. I got admitted to the University of Osteopathic Medicine and Health Sciences in Des Moines, Iowa. Nice school, private, beautiful school. One-on-one teaching. And I went through med school, and it was a grueling experience, and it was very selfish. It was a time where you just are alone, and in the library, and in the lab, and it was eye-opening. I didn't expect it to be quite intense, but it was good. And graduated from med school. I did my postgraduate training in Michigan on the east side of the state. And then I went into, I was board certified in family practice, and I went into family practice, We always laugh, we go womb to tomb, baby, right? Mm-hmm. So it was good. And when I started practice, it was really interesting. Because back then, 100,000 years ago, back then we did it all. So I delivered babies, I did minor surgery, I did all kinds of procedures in the office, and it was real exciting to me because it was challenging and it was diverse. So I loved it. And then times changed. And as we moved on, it got more segmented and divided. And it was no longer looking at the human body as a holistic person. It was like, we have like heart and lung and immune and bone. And so it broke up into specialties. Insurance companies started to get more difficult, so to speak. On what they will allow. And so a lot of my talent basically had to be put aside because I wasn't able to do the things that I was trained to do. So the frustration started coming in. That's what happened.
That's what I was going to ask you. That had to be incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
Because your vision was to really treat the whole. And here you're being told, that's not how we do things. You have to specialize. You have to go one direction. Yeah. So how did you handle that?
I pursued through it. when I grew up, my family doctor lived in his house and his office was on the first floor. So when we had problems, I would knock on the door, and I was used to that. It's really cool. But I pursued through it. What really, I guess the event that is completely a turnaround in my life was I was up in northern Michigan and had a home up there, and I had to cut away for a satellite system. So on the way home from work, I stopped and bought a chainsaw. And, I'm like, well, this is not something I haven't done before. I worked with tools. I've cut trees down.
Your roots, right?
Yeah, that's my roots, right? So I'm like,
this
I
is
got
how you grew
this.
up.
It's no big deal. And so I cut probably 4 or 5 trees down, no problem. But there was one tree right next to the house. It was kind of squirrely. Made me a little nervous. We roped it, we tied it, we pulled it back. And I was cutting that down, and a slight wind blew. And that tree started to fall right towards the house. And my son was in a high chair over the kitchen. So I grabbed that rope, and I put my foot down, and I pulled as hard as I could that tree away from to kill my son. And it hit the garage, and it bullwhipped me, and I went up, the tree went up, and I came down and right on top of me. It landed from here to here. Crushed me. I was about 1.5 inches thick at that point. Couldn't breathe. Called, some person with me called 911, screaming. My next door neighbor was a radiologist. He ran to the hospital, fired up the CAT scan machine. EMS came out there. They're looking at me like, hey, bro, when we pull this tree off you, you're going to go. You know that? I said, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. As it turned out, when the tree crushed me, it broke all my left ribs and pushed my heart in the right side of my chest, and my whole left lung was full of blood. And so I had what's called a tension pneumothorax, which is deadly. And the paramedics really knew what they were doing because I put a chest tube in right there in the field to let the pressure out. And so I went out, and JJ, it was a very, very peaceful, beautiful experience at that moment. I'll just never forget that. I always, when I get irritable or agitated, I go back to that moment, and I think about the peace of that quiet time I had. And when I woke up, it was like I saw these lights. I'm like, I made it to heaven, right? I made it. But I hurt from head to toe. And I'm like, you're not supposed to hurt in heaven, right?
Right. They're like, no, sorry, we're not ready for you. You're going back. Yeah,
Exactly.
Your work is not done yet. You're going back.
So I was in the ICU. That's what happened. And I was there for a while, and had to go through that recovery. And so from that point forward, my whole life went upside down, and I experienced total loss. Over the time, what happened over that incident was, I lost everything. I lost my family. I lost my finance. I lost my practice. I lost everything. I had nothing.
These are these moments.
It was a moment where, I had to regroup. Like, who am I? What do I want to do? Right? And so I even thought about joining the seminary. Actually, I did join the seminary. I was there for about 6 months, just to kind of, dig deep and find out what is going on. But, clearly God spoke to my heart and said, I didn't create you to be a, pastor or leadership. You're created to help others one-on-one.
Yeah, where you can turn your pain into your purpose, really.
Yeah, pain into purpose. The miracle moment right there.
Absolutely. Yep. Hence the name of the podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, as you're telling the story, the emotion that even overcomes me is that, like, you're holding your breath moment.
Yep.
When you're not sure how it's going to turn out on the other end.
Yeah.
And now we're here, and you can talk about it and share.
Yeah. Well, that moment brought me here.
Yes.
Because through that moment and through that 1 year recovery, I had a reseat for my boards, right? So I had to recertify. And so, I called a recruiter, actually. I thought about going overseas and actually doing missionary medicine. That's what I thought about. But, I lost my spleen, and, my immune system was where it needed to be to do that kind of medicine. It's too risky. So he says, I've got a spot for you. And he led me to South Carolina, in the rural areas of South Carolina. I don't know if you know what the PD is.
I don't yet, but
Okay.
you want to tell us?
The PD in South Carolina is the low country. It's very rural, very much in need of health care, and a lot of sick people. So I started my career after I recovered in that environment. And it led to an amazing practice, because eventually what happened was I developed a company called Mobile Medical Care. I bought an F-350, striped it out, put on a wobulator, all my equipment in the truck. And then I met a beautiful woman, and, we got married, and she was by my side. And so she sat next to me in the truck, and we took healthcare to patients' homes.
When was this?
We were
What year was
four-wheeling
this?
it through the cornfields. It was amazing.
I mean, had they ever had exposure to something like this before?
No,
You were
no,
the first
no. Their
trailblazer.
healthcare was ambulance, emergency room back home, which took advantage of them too, because there was a lot of financial risk there. So bringing care to them was very helpful. But what I learned through that was amazing, though, Jackie. I'm telling you what I learned was, when you go into a patient's home, and I mean, you're sitting in their kitchen or their bedroom, and you see their environment of where they live and how they live. Wow. Opened my eyes big time. So we were caring for these people on the grassroots. I mean, it was ground up. I'll never forget, I walked into one of my patients' homes, and she was not old. She was like 32 years old. Older home, opened the door, and a gust of air just hit me, and I just started coughing and went to the truck, and I'm like, I better wear a mask here. And I went inside the home. Inside the home, there was a llama, chickens, rabbits, dogs, and cats inside the home.
It was an indoor farm.
It was a farm inside
Basically.
the home. I'm like, okay. And I'm wondering why you have respiratory disease.
Of course.
And so I ended up with respiratory issues for 3 months because of that incident. And so, yeah, we found the cause of the problem.
Which that is so difficult to do in modern day medicine, because you're not in the environment to assess it, to
Exactly.
understand what got them there in the first place.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thank God for these moments of, grassroots and going back to the core. Because medicine can be very high-end, intense, and very technical. And it should be at some point, because that's where we're going. And I love it. I mean, that's where I'm working now, right? With genetics and all that stuff. I love it. But let's never forget, the human body is amazing. What I've learned through my career is that I don't think we'll ever understand fully the human body. It is an amazing creation. One that the intricacies of the human body and the difference between humanity and any other animal out there, it's incredible. Everybody talks very fluently about body, mind, spirit. You see it everywhere. Body, mind, spirit. Really?
Buzzwords.
What does it really mean? And that's what I experienced. I've seen sickness develop from stress and spiritual unrest internally. I've seen all aspects of diseases that come. And inevitably, when you look at a person who has a serious illness or cancer or something like that, and you trace back, you can usually find a life-changing event of stress or something that happened that compromises the immune system. And then that can occur. So this is, it's an amazing field. And where I work now is identifying that prior to its culmination of disease. And so that's why we check cortisol patterns and talk about, some type of, spirituality, whatever that is for that person, what is it for them? And, what kind of stress do they live with? How much, insult is their immune system, undergoing? And so you start at that base with testing, and then we build from there.
Well, when I discovered you, which I can talk about the fact that I'm also your patient, Dr. Orbeck.
Yes, you are.
It was because of this desire for optimization. And that's what I do in my day-to-day with my clients, but also for me, turning it back into this optimization of health and wellness, realizing traditional methods were not working for me anymore. And that's when I discovered you. And what was so powerful and interesting is the connection of why I chose you is because something spoke to my spirit. After looking at a variety of other practitioners, and I was called to come to see you. And I'm curious to know how often you might hear something like that. How many other patients, say it was just a gut instinct. I had to see Dr. Orbeck for treatment or to learn more about what he does.
That's a very interesting comment you just made. It's not with everyone, because everyone's not at that plane. Like, you have to be pretty aware of yourself internally to understand that emotion. And a lot of people live outside of that plane. They live in the fast lane, and they don't understand or know the spiritual or emotional, I'll say, not spiritual, but emotional talk to the body and the connection. One-on-one connections are critical. You have two types, right? Mm-hmm. You have positive reinforcement and negative energy. And unfortunately, the way our world is now going, negative energy is superseding positive reinforcement. And so we're now living in a little bit of a chaos. I think we're going to see more and more issues with health because there's a lot of chaos. But answering your particular question, I hear that from people that are in tune to who they are. And I also frequently have a tissue box on my table because people, when we talk and communicate, we get a little deeper. And so it brings out some emotion. And that's important. Like, you have to bring that out in order to deal with the underlying issues. Because inevitably, symptoms and disease result from internal unwellness, which results from a complex issue of physiology, immunology, nutrition, fitness, all very important in your overall expression of health and living optimally your best. Okay? Which is, one of our logos, empowering you to be your best. Is every person I see one at a time, my goal for that person is simply to empower them to be their best. That's my goal. However that road will turn out, we're going to just drive through it and run with it and see what we can do.
Well, you feel that as soon as you walk into your office. That's how I felt.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's because of your leadership as well, and it is something that I think extends throughout your team, which is fantastic. You feel very taken care of. I definitely was one of those patients that may have cried at your table. Yes, it's true. I'm okay to admit that, but it was because of the level of comfort, and I felt, okay, I have hope, which was really exciting. And then your approach to this holistic health, which is we're going to do blood work, we're going to do a urine sample, we're going to do all these things to allow me to see what's really happening inside. This goes back to what your holistic vision.
Exactly, and I love that you mentioned hope this morning. Because the main outcome that I have for my initial consultations, because many patients come into me and they've seen 4, 5, 6 doctors, and they're for some reason, one or another, they're not obtaining results that they want to have, or they don't have the fullness of the health that they want to achieve. The only thing that I want to do during my initial consultation, I don't want to make this huge diagnosis of multiple ICD-10 codes and outline a comprehensive, huge treatment plan. My initial consultation is simply, let's look basically at what you've got. Let's look basically at what are the issues. And there's one thing I want you to have for me today, and that's hope. I want you to walk out this door and go, wow, I have hope now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Orbeck. We appreciate you today sharing about your life and your story and how you got started. And we cannot wait to hear more.
Excellent. Thank you, JJ.
My pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. We look forward to seeing you next time when we talk further about Dr. Orbeck's practice, Regenerative Medical Institute.